Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, September 30th, and I'm going to do an update for you guys today on what's going on with the HEROES Act. So I just got a new camera, by the way, which I'm pretty excited about, if you noticed. I'll wait for you guys to join for a minute, but today, so the other day, actually, I think it was, what day? What day is it today? It's Wednesday. So Monday, I believe, is when the HEROES Act 2.0, I guess we'll call it, HEROES Act 2, came out from the Democratic side. So I want to talk about what's in it. A lot of times I don't really get deep into bills that are just proposed. So this is a proposal. This has not passed anywhere. I do expect that this will go to the House for a vote. This will pass the House, but similar to the HEROES Act 1 from May, this will not be the final bill that is passed. So likely there will still be some modifications, but I do think it's yes, exactly. We have some movement, okay? We have some movement, you guys. So that is a very positive thing to see movement. It seems like there is renewed hope that a deal can come. And I think that this is kind of the first step to that. So will this be the final thing that is passed? Likely no, but this is a lot of what you will find in here is a good window into what might be in the final bill. Because remember, they're not fighting about all the things. They're fighting about some of the things. And a lot of the things that impact you as a business owner aren't the things that are overly contentious. So I wanted to bring some of this to you guys so that you could kind of get an idea for what you might see in the final bill. But I have to caveat, right? This is not final and this is not passed, but I just think it's important for you guys to be aware. So there are changes in a lot of the things that you guys ask me about all the time. There are changes in PPP in here. There are changes in EIDL in here. There are changes in unemployment. And knowing what I know about you and the questions I get from you, I think a lot of these are actually going to be positive changes for you if they end up in the final bill that does get passed. Okay. And I will say, thank you. I'm pretty jazzed about it. I got it all set up this weekend in my new studio. So I'm pretty excited. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. I want to go through, I'm actually going to put up on the screen for you. So this new bill, over 2,000 pages in this HEROES Act 2. It's a lot of pages. So full disclosure, I have not read the whole thing. I love you guys, but man, I don't think I could make it through that entire thing. And again, it's a proposal, so we'll wait and see what's in the final, but there is a summary. The summary is 87 pages, you guys. So I'm going to jump into the summary here in a minute and just walk you through some of the things that are specifically going to impact you as a business owner or self-employed person. But I will say first, it does have the provision in it for another stimulus check. It would be $1,200. Again, likely the same income limits and everything would apply. But the one big change that I think people will like is the fact that the dependent age limit has been taken off. So it was only 17 and under when the first one went through that you get $500 for each dependent under that age. Now it's any dependent, including adult dependents, if this were to pass. So that's, I think, a positive change. I think there was a lot of reaction and it seemed very arbitrary. So I think that that is something positive for you guys. Okay, let's jump on in, shall we? Let's see what this thing looks like. Sorry for those of you who are watching this on your phone. It's probably very small. Hopefully you can actually read it. But I wanted to start first with PPP. And I'm not going to go through every single bullet point here. I'm just going to point out some of the things that I think are important for you guys. So PPP would be opening back up. There would be some clarifications around PPP where basically, as it stands right now, it's 8 or 24 weeks is your covered period. You can apply before the 24 weeks, but it gets a little complicated, especially if you have employees trying to calculate out what your forgiveness is. So what they would clarify here is to say, no, it starts when you get the money, but it can be any period of time between when you get the money and when you finish it. So it can be it has to be at least 8 weeks, but it can be 10 weeks, it can be 12 weeks, and that would become your covered period. So that was an interesting change, I thought, that kind of simplifies a little bit of the complexities when you're calculating out your potential forgiveness, especially for those with employees who have to worry about kind of that FTE average. I thought that was a positive change. So they'd be reopening that back up through, I think, December 31st. And they'd be opening it up for people who haven't gotten one and people who already received one. Though, as we expected, the guidelines for those who actually have already received one are going to be higher to get a second one. I will mention this because Charlene, you just asked if there's a grant out there for an independent contractor. You are eligible for a PPP loan, which it is forgivable. You can use it to pay yourself entirely as an independent contractor, and it will be fully forgiven. So if you have not gotten your PPP loan, I recommend, Charlene, that if and when they open this back up, that you go get one. So if you're in that space where you didn't realize, I still talk to people daily who don't realize that the PPP loans were able to be received by people who didn't have employees and who were independent contractors or self-employed individuals. You absolutely can. All you need is to have a Schedule C, line 31. That's your tax return, Schedule C, your business income and expenses. Your line 31 needs to be positive from 2019. If it was, you qualify for your PPP loan that you can use entirely to pay yourself. Okay, so again, you will be able to get a second PPP if you have under 200 employees, okay? And you have losses of at least 25%. Now, I can't remember on this one. I think it says quarterly revenue losses. I think it's just one quarter over quarter, picking a Q1, Q2, or Q3 of 2020 versus the same quarter in 2019. That keeps coming down. Remember, it used to be, I think 50 is where it started, and then it was 35, and now we're at 25. So that would open it up to a lot more businesses. You can't get it if you're publicly traded. And there are maximums if you have more than one physical location. So I think the maximum was like 10 million or something like that. It's pretty high, but it just means you can't have 100 locations and get a whole bunch of, and get $1 million for each location in PPP loans. Okay, here it is, you guys. Here it is. Who sees it? Streamline, Section 203, streamline forgiveness of small dollar loans. Woohoo! Okay, so this is the much longed for blanket forgiveness. Now it's worded a little bit differently. And again, I'm going to keep clarifying during this because I know people are joining and unjoining. This is all just proposed right now, but we're trying to get a read through on where we may end up because these are not overly contentious issues. So this may be the starting point of where we would end up. So if it's, now remember, we were looking at the under 150,000. This specifically says that under 50,000, basically the borrower needs to certify to the administration, which is the SBA, basically, that they've met the requirements of the program for forgiveness and must keep documentation, but they don't actually have to give any documentation. So this is that kind of certification where it just says, okay, I'm going to check a box that I did what I was supposed to do. For a lot of you guys who are self-employed, et cetera, this is a really good thing because it just means you're not going to have to come up with bank statements to show how you paid yourself, which y'all know I think is the silliest thing on the planet for someone who's a self-employed person. You're not going to have to get into all of that. It's just going to be check the box. Yes, you need to keep some documentation in case you're ever audited. Of course, that's always the general rule of thumb with these things. But it would streamline for you your forgiveness process. No actual application would be needed, just basically a checkbox certification. And that may be something you actually wouldn't even go through your bank through. It almost sounds like you go directly to the SBA, possibly, that they might cut out the middleman. So yet to be seen how that would work in practice. Then if it was between 50 and 150,000, then borrowers must submit the certification to their lender via simplified forgiveness application and keep documentation. So again, you don't actually have to provide any of that documentation. All you would have to give is just the application form, likely the easy form or something similar to it that you would be able to fill out if you hit that 50 to 150. They may come out with a new one that would be simplified as well, but you would not have to give over your payroll reports and all of those things to prove out those calculations. You would just keep that. So again, you would have to certify, yes, I used it correctly, and keep all of that documentation. And then over 150,000, sorry, you got to go through the whole rigmarole process and give them all your whole life's worth of documents. So I think if this were to pass, I think this looks reasonable to me. I think it looks like a reasonable answer. There's still a few things that I have questions on, which are like, how do you check a box that you used it correctly if, say, the bank overfunded you and you know that they overfunded you, which happened to a lot of people who might have been funded based on gross revenue instead of net profit? Doesn't really speak to that, right? Can you just say, well, I did my best, I used it as I was supposed to, but I got more than I needed to? Yet to be determined on how that would actually work in practice. But I think overall, it is a plus if this does pass. Yes, so again, we don't know, but I think it's really good that this was in there. And I think that it leads me to believe that there will be something in the final stimulus that will pass. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to come down and see. So I'm going to skip through some of this. There's some wording, and I did attach this. So if you want to read through all of this and you're like, whoa, you're going too fast, I attached the full 87-page summary, and I've also attached the full 2,000+ page bill. If you guys, I spent far too much time in it this morning. I'm not going to lie. I read through a lot of the different sections in there, and you can get lost for a little while. It's good bedtime reading. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so there's the 10 million for businesses with more than one location. It expands what you can use PPP for. And this, I think, also would apply to people who already got PPP. So you would be able to use it for PPE. So all of that stuff you might have had to buy to make sure that you were safe and sanitized and all of that. Supplier costs and costs related to property damage for public disturbances are all now eligible to be used with PPP funds. So again, they just keep making it easier to get these loans forgiven. Unless you got it completely fraudulently, they just keep making it easier and easier to be able to get it forgiven. Let's see. Some changes to the documentation, some changes around seasonal employees, flexibility period. So if that applies to you, go check that out. Not a ton of this. Let's see. This is all just very specific, so I'm not going to jump into all of it, but feel free to look at it on your own. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's useful. Those are really the main things I think with PPP. So, and there's already money still left over from the first round. So a lot of that is what's going to be used for this second round of PPP. Okay. Now, so let me know if you have questions on PPP specifically, and I'm going to keep talking on the rest of it. Let's see. Do you think the funding amount will be the same? Yes, it doesn't look like I have not seen anything in the actual act that I went through that says that the calculation will be any different. So I think it would still be 2.5, based on 2.5 months worth of payroll to get the loan. But I don't know if you're getting a second, they may build that out a little bit and have a little bit of a different calculation methodology. But as of right now, I'm expecting that it's going to be the same thing. Okay, we're going to talk about EIDL here. Good question. When will we know if it passes? So it likely will go to the House this week. It likely will pass the House this week, but that's because this is the Democrat bill and the House is democratically controlled. So it's going to pass the House. It will go to the Senate. It will not probably even go up for a vote in the Senate, I wouldn't guess, unless the president specifically signals support for the bill, in which case it may. But more than likely, it'll go to the Senate, and they'll be talking it out as well and working out some of the details. As of right now, the president has signaled support for. There was another. It's not even really a bill; it's more of a framework that it was called the Problem Solvers Caucus. I talked about it on a Q&A a couple of weeks ago. They have a 1.5 trillion bill. The HEROES is now 2.2. So we've gone all over the place. Just like as some background, it started with the HEROES Act from the Democrats in May was 3.4. Did I say billion? Trillion. Sorry. These numbers don't even make sense anymore. 3.4 trillion is where the Democrats started. Then it was about a 1 trillion bill from the Republicans, or maybe it was one, yeah, maybe a little bit more. And then the Republicans went down to 500 billion, and now the Democrats have come down to 2.2 trillion. And then there was a specific this problem solvers caucus that had a 1.5 trillion framework, not real bill. It hasn't been really sort of fleshed out, but they had a framework for 1.5 trillion that the president actually did signal that he would support. So the question is 2.2, 1.5, are we in the ballpark? Would the president be okay with that? If so, that's going to put some pressure on the Republicans to play ball with the Democrats if the president signals support, which he seems to be in favor of higher numbers based on statements he's made previously. So again, we will see what happens. I think we'll know more over the next week or so as to where all of this goes. And I'll update you guys on Friday if there are any changes. I do my Q&As about the stimulus on Fridays at 1:30 Central Time. So make sure to see me over there if you want to know what's going on. Okay. Yes, Quinn, you can apply for another. Well, not yet. This bill would allow for you to apply for a second one, but it has not been passed. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to go into EIDL real quick because there's several things I want to talk about EIDL. There's one new program that's a grant program I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about unemployment. So there's a lot of things I want to get through here. EIDL has some potential changes. So let's see. One of the things, so in this first one, basically, it gives the SBA the ability to sort of work with people who are in hardship positions to lower the EIDL interest rate and defer payments for up to 4 years. Now, I don't think that's going to be an automatic thing for everybody who got EIDL, but I think that's going to be something on a case-by-case basis that they are allowed to do for those. There may be a hardship application process. So nope, no talk. I know we continue to, people continue to ask me, is there a possibility of EIDL being forgiven? I really don't think so. It was a loan, you signed loan papers, you will have to pay it back. But again, there may be some help if you are not in a place, I think that the payments were supposed to start taking place a year after you got it. Some people may not be in a place to be able to do that. So there may be an avenue to go and negotiate that with the SBA. So hopefully that would help some people, again, if this were to be passed. I like a lot of the additions in here around transparency. So it basically talks about you need explanations if you're declined. You need to know where your application is in the process, because that was one of the big things where there just has not been a lot of transparency around what's going on, which leaves people wondering, am I going to get a loan? Am I not going to get a loan? How long am I going to have to wait for this? So this would require, now, again, as we've seen, they can put whatever they want in this bill, but then on the back end, it's whether or not that actually happens and whether or not they can make that occur from just a procedural standpoint. So that we would have to wait and see. But ultimately, this would call for more transparency around the process, which I think would be good. Let's see, this would make it, a lot of people didn't realize that they didn't opt into the grant. Like, who wouldn't opt into a free grant? I don't know. And they were kind of mad because they missed out on it. This way you would actually opt out of the grant. It does look like they'd be opening potentially the grants back open, that they would be putting more funding towards EIDL grants and reopening that. I don't think you'd be able to get a second, but we'd have to see how that was written in the final one. Again, like I said, data transparency. Okay. So those are the main changes. Well, I'm going to skip this for a second and then I'm going to come back down here. Also, you could, it takes away the cap. So remember, they capped the EIDL. I think it was 200,000 they capped it at. Typically, EIDL is supposed to be capped at 2 million. So if you would normally have been able to get more than what you got, you could go back and get more if this were to pass. So this would raise it back up to the $2 million limit for EIDL. And so it would be based on, I think it's 6 months of your operating costs, so 6 months of your working capital, up to a maximum of 2 million. So if you did not receive, if your EIDL that you got was not enough for 6 months worth of working capital, you'd be able to go back and get more. So that's a good thing as well. Let's see. Yep, I think those are the main things on EIDL. And then I'm going to show you something exciting here in a minute. So let me show you, I'm just going to skip down really quickly and show you something that it was kind of hidden in here and I saw it, and I think that this is something y'all are going to be interested in. Section 601, repeal of language regarding EIDL advances and PPP forgiveness. So this is talking about repealing the section of the CARES Act, which erroneously, it's a word, it's one of those words I never pronounce correctly. I feel like I did okay there. Removed the amount of an EIDL advance from the PPP forgiveness calculation. What this says to me, again, this is not passed, you guys, but I like that this is in here. This seems to be saying the whole funny business about having to subtract your EIDL advance amount received from your PPP loan forgiveness would no longer apply. That's how I read this, is that kind of craziness. And people have been asking that question too. How does that work with blanket forgiveness, right? Okay, I'm getting forgiven for my $20,000 PPP loan, but then I also had a $1,000 advance. So do I now have a PPP loan of $1,000? The way it's written currently, yes. It looks like if something like this were to pass, they would be saying, you know what, that was kind of a bad idea, right? So that one, yeah, right? Like that one, I think if something similar to this passes, that is, I think, a very good change from a procedural standpoint, and just having to deal with these small advances that people are now going to have to pay back. Nobody wants to deal with that. Banks don't want to deal with that, anything. So I'm pretty excited too, Stacy. I'm pretty excited about that one too. Okay. So I'm going to go back up real quick. So that was PPP, that was EIDL. Those are the changes that were proposed. Okay. If we come back up though, section 405 here, SBA Lifeline Grant Program. This is new. I hadn't seen anything like this previously. This is a new grant program, and this is not a $1,000 per employee grant program, okay? This is a Lifeline grant program for small businesses with 50 or fewer employees that have suffered an economic loss of at least 30%. So there's a lot of numbers here. Remember, it was 25% now for a second PPP loan. For this grant program, it's 30%, but I believe this one's actually, you pick an 8-week period in 2020 and compare it to an 8-week period in 2019. So I love how they just change things slightly enough to make it confusing. But the way this is written, it would be 8-week period versus 8-week period. You could pick whichever one, a consecutive 8-week period. And if you had losses of at least 30%, then you could apply potentially for this grant. Now, I will say there's only $40 billion. That's not a ton. It's not a ton. So this is one, it does look like you would have to apply for an EIDL loan. Now you can apply if you didn't get the full amount of the EIDL loan you should have, you can reapply for another EIDL loan. So it looks like you'd have to apply, and that you would receive the lesser of basically 6 months of working capital or $50,000. So you could receive that as a grant, maximum $50,000. So, and it could be used pretty widely. It can be used similar to your EIDL loan, plus some extra things. You can actually repay your PPP or EIDL with it. And you could do any kind of business continuity strategy. So if you had to kind of pivot your business during the pandemic, that you could use these these grant proceeds to pay for that. And importantly, it does have a caveat here that grants will be approved first for applicants in low-income communities, veteran-owned businesses, or businesses controlled by an economically disadvantaged individual or socially disadvantaged individual. What does that mean? That's all spelled out. They've defined all of that within the actual act if you want to go in there and see what that means. So they will be giving preference to those businesses, and there's not a ton of money there. So how quickly something like that runs out, I don't know. But if this were to pass, it's an interesting one where you'd be able to get an actual sizable grant, unlike what happened with most people with the EIDL, which ended up being pretty minimal from a grant perspective. So that's just an interesting one to keep an eye on, because if you can get a grant of up to $50,000, I mean, that's pretty dang good. But I will say I'm concerned about the fact that it's $40 billion, because I would expect that unless people just didn't know about it, that would go pretty fast. But you guys, if this passes, are going to know about it because you're here with me. So stick around. Okay. So that was the new one. So questions, anybody questions about that? Somebody's talking about the debate. That was an interesting one. I went through slightly too much wine during that debate. I have to be honest. I needed it to get through it. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think some of this, and again, hasn't passed. So we'll reserve some judgment and see what actually passes. That's a good question. I would think, yes. So it looks like it's through application for an EIDL loan, similar to what the grant program was before. You would actually apply for an EIDL loan, and you could even apply, I think again, even if you already have one, and apply for this grant. So, so you would go, that goes directly to the SBA for the EIDL loans. Yeah, I mean, I have not seen anything that says no, that a sole prop could not get the new grant. I did read the background on this, and it did not say anything about requiring you to have employees. So I would think so. A lot of this, so there isn't a ton, honestly, Veronica, out there to help new businesses. There really isn't, because they are going to want to be able to see proof of injury, and proof of injury is really hard for you to prove if you're a brand new business. And I know that sucks for people who started a business, early in the year before all this happened and then haven't been able to get traction. That's, I think, where unemployment comes in to help, and pandemic unemployment assistance. That's really more what it is, but it's really hard to think about, just like even the vetting concerns of, everybody could just say, well, I was starting a business, you know what I mean? And they have nothing to go off of on what they would give you or how you would qualify, right? Let's see. So the new grant would not affect, it does not have anything in here. And in fact, I mean, if for some reason your PPP was not forgiven, you could actually pay it back with this grant. But you guys are all going to get your PPP forgiven, so it's totally fine. Or you could pay back if you got an EIDL loan. You're like, heck, I'd rather have the grant. Then you could apply for the grant and then pay back your loan with it. So there are some options there. Yeah, I think it would be available. And again, because it says you can repay your EIDL loan outstanding with it, then yeah, I would say yes, people who already have EIDL loans could apply as well. Let's see. So EIDL loan, it's a loan, but so if you need the capital to continue, then I do think EIDL is a loan that does not require personal guarantees, which is really good. It is a loan that, if you get under $25,000, doesn't even require any business collateral. It is a loan at a pretty good interest rate. And again, with some of these changes, you may even be able to defer it up to 4 years if you talk to your lender about that. Again, though, that wouldn't be automatic. So I think the EIDL is from a terms perspective, a pretty preferential loan. But I always caution people before they enter into debt, is that something you want or need, right? That's not right for everyone. And if you can avoid it, then that's awesome. Okay. I haven't seen specifically if nonprofits are covered in the Lifeline grant. I know there's some wording around nonprofits for the second PPP. but you could dig into the actual wording in the act that I pasted above and see if it's in there. Let's see, lots of questions. So currently the EIDL advance is not open right now. It looks like it probably will, or it may even just be replaced. Like it may be this SBA Lifeline grant program instead. So we'll have to wait and see what passes and what that actually looks like, because if it's replaced by this grant program, then that could be something that would be interesting to you. And it does seem to me that you should be able to be eligible if you are a sole proprietor as well. Let's see. Let's see. Yes, this is going to be available for replay, April. You can always watch these on my YouTube video or on my YouTube channel too. I recommend people watch the replay on YouTube because you can speed me up too if you want to. But then I talk super fast because I talk fast anyway, so warning. Yes, you'll be able to watch it later. Let's see. I can't remember. I think they generally want it to be up and running within pretty quickly after this were to pass. So if this were to pass, then I think within maybe 2 weeks of it passing, hopefully there would be that opportunity. But stick around here and I will tell you and keep you updated on all of it. Yes, there is in the new bill. Yep. Okay. Let's see. I'm missing some of your questions, I know. Okay, hang on. Could you explain, Sarah asked, could you explain one more time if we do take EIDL, if that affects our PPP amount? I already got PPP and EIDL keeps reminding me to apply, but I haven't. No, so so you do have to use them for different purposes. This bill actually clarifies a little bit that different purposes would be, like, you just can't use them for the same cost. So you can't say like, okay, I use this to pay my employees for May, June, and July, and I also use the EIDL to pay my employees for May, June, and July, right? But you could say, okay, I used this for May, June, and July, and this for August, September, October, right? So you definitely can get both. It's not double dipping to get PPP and EIDL. You just have to use them for different expenses, obviously, because it doesn't really make sense to use two different sets of money for the same thing. So yes, you should be fine to be able to take it. But remember, it's debt. So I'm always a person who wants you to be super cautious about entering into debt because you have to pay it back. So make sure if you're going to take it on, that's debt that you can use to then propel your business forward to make more money so that you can pay that back. Make sure it's an investment. I don't generally recommend, unless absolutely necessary, that people take out a loan to pay themselves, because you got to pay that back with interest, and that's you're financing your own paycheck in that regard. Let's see. Okay. Let me look at this one. We're running into the problem of obtaining materials because our manufacturers have shut down related to employees with COVID. We're having to buy large quantities. Larger warehouse stock, but we can't use EIDL for moving to a larger space. Should I try to convert to a standard SBA loan? So you might want to look into a second PPP, because some of that may be things that you can, and I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about that you need, but some of that may be covered because they've loosened the rules around PPP. So that might be a good avenue for a second PPP loan, and use your EIDL for regular operating expenses rather than converting it. But you can always talk to your lender to see what makes the most sense for you and what you're trying to do. Okay, here we go. Unemployment. Okay, so thank you. All right, so for unemployment, I do want to get into that really, really quickly. Let me see if I can even remember what page unemployment was on. I think it was in the 40s. So again, there's a lot of pages to this, y'all, a lot. So this would extend unemployment through January 31st at the additional $600. Here it is. Now, again, this is a bill, guys. This is a bill. This is just proposed. This is one of those, this is a contentious place. I don't expect that Republicans would sign on for the extra 600. I think that number will come down, but it may be through January 31st. And it looks like they would backdate it to the week of September 6th. So I think they're trying to kind of align it, it seems like, with like the run out of benefits from the Trump executive order that got a lot of people got additional benefits through that. So this would go back to September 6th, again, if this bill were passed, and be the $600 through the end of January. And it looks like there may be even a kind of tail off between January and March, depending on your situation. It also, this made me laugh a minute, because remember, we had PEUC, which was the expansion, the added 13 weeks, right? On top of what your state benefit, you could get an extra 13 weeks. Section 103, and I had to read this. Is it 103? Maybe not. It's one of these sections. Where is it? It extended it again. Let me see if I can find it. And it was like another 13 weeks. I can't remember, but it was like this very long acronym for what it was going to be called. So it would extend it. It looks like another 13. Here it is. Section 201. This section creates a new federal program, Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Extension Compensation, PEUEC, that would have another 13 weeks. So it looks like it would be an extra 13 weeks on top of the 13 weeks we already have, but it's a little bit fuzzy. Another thing that I thought was really interesting in here, you guys, was some of these clarifications, because some of these things are things that different states have been, I think they acknowledge the fact that states have been actually implementing this and using their own rules in some ways, and there's not a lot of consistency with how that they are rolling some of this out. So they kind of seek to clarify this. So Section 301, this section clarifies that under PUA, for workers unable to work because care is not available for a child or disabled adult for whom they are a primary caregiver, that they would still be eligible basically for PUA in that instance. So if you have to be home with your kid because your kid's not in school, or they're on a hybrid schedule or something like that, that you would still be covered under PUA. Different states were basically saying different things on that. So that was an interesting clarification. There were a couple more, let's see. And then Section 303, this is interesting for business owners. This section will clarify that individuals could be eligible for PUA even if the business is not fully closed, so long as pandemic forced changes are preventing the individual worker from earning income. State interpretations of the CARES Act on this point currently vary. So they're trying to say, okay, we know that things are varying and different states are doing different things, but the intention of PUA is that if your business has been impacted, even if it's not fully closed, you could still be eligible. Obviously, you'd still have the income limits, right, that you would have to deal with. But in some states, they were saying that if your business is operating at all, you couldn't get it, which then actually was disincenting people from operating their business at all. Okay. All right. So yes. The acronyms. I can't even with the acronyms, you guys. I just can't. Okay. All right. So that is what I saw on unemployment. Let me see. So if our 24-week PPP deadline is approaching, should we apply for forgiveness now or wait? You have 10 months from the end of your covered period. So from the end of your 8 or 24 weeks, whichever you are choosing, you have 10 months to apply for forgiveness. That's a while. So given this, unless you are in a situation where you have employees and you need to lay them off ASAP, in that case, I would go ahead and apply if you can, if your bank's letting you. Otherwise, if your loan's under 150K, I'd probably hold out because it's going to save you some time and energy and potentially costs from your accountant or whoever you're using. I think it's going to greatly simplify things for you. So that's what I would say, unless you are an employer who needs to lay people off, in which case it's a little bit more complicated. Let's see. Yes, more than likely, yes. Towards the end of the PPP, most banks were we're making you have your 2019 taxes done anyway. So if you haven't done those, they're due, but even if you extended, guys, they're due in 2 weeks. So make sure you do those. Get your tax return in. Okay, guys, I'm going to go because I don't want this to get too long because then people don't watch it on replay. So I'll be back. I'll take more of your questions and give you an update of anything that happened between now and Friday when we get there. 1:30 p.m. on Friday, I'll do my stimulus Q&A. And let me know about any questions you want me to talk about then. But I love you guys. You're awesome. And we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.